Hey Wargamers, welcome back to the channel, Death from Above Wargaming. I'm Aaron, and I'm back tonight with a mech review, the Timberwolf Prime. That's right, we're heading into the clan invasion. Guys, I'm really excited. We finally got it done. We updated the BattleTech engine with all of the clan invasion era technology. So if you want to know, streak missiles, ultra ACs, ER lasers, XL fusion engines, ferrofibers, is it worth it? Is it worth it to pay all that extra BV? You're going to be able to find out starting tonight with the Timberwolf. Now, in addition, guys, we're going to be ready to release, finally, BattleTech on the web. It's going to be a beta release. We have all of the Wave 1 Kickstarter mechs already uploaded and ready for your review, multiple variants and configurations of each of those mechs. Additionally, we'll be uploading shortly after all of the Game of Armored Combat mechs. And you can go there right now, www.battletech.com, and check it out. So do it. Let us know what you think. Again, we still have a lot of sort of fine-tuning, but as far as the model and the math is concerned, that is locked and loaded. It's good to go. But, some cosmetic things that need to be done here and there. So check it out. Let us know what you think. But back to tonight's main event, the Timberwolf Prime. This mech is iconic. I chose to start with this one because, it was the first mech on the cover of MechWarrior 2. It's been in every single MechWarrior video game since. It was in the cartoon. It's just a clan workhorse. It's such a great mech, right? It screams BattleTech whenever you see it. It's phenomenal. Tons of weapons, from LRM-20s all the way down to machine guns. Has just about everything in between. It's fast, it's heavily armored, but it is expensive. It clocks in north of 2,700 BV, so when you drop a clan pilot into this thing, it gets expensive really quick. So, is it going to stack up? How's it going to pan out? We have a whole bunch of new looks at the data, some additional analyses. I'm going to go through all of those. Really excited to do that, so stick around. Timberwolf Prime coming right up. Alright guys, let's get this review started. So, we're talking about the Timberwolf, the primary configuration. It's a 75-ton mech, and it has a battle value of 2,737. So by far, this is the most expensive mech we've reviewed to date. It is a clan Omni mech, so it has multiple configurations there. But this particular one was produced in 2945, so this was sort of the genesis of the Timberwolf. That was about 100 years ahead of the clan invasion, so obviously saw a lot of action on those homeworlds before making its way into the inner sphere. But it actually stuck around according to the master unit list. If you check it out, this mech is just prevalent throughout the BattleTech timeline and never really dies out. It's persistent all the way through the Dark Ages. So pretty cool. Talking about the technical specs, so movement profile, a 5.8, it has no jump capability. That is very fast for a 75-ton mech, and that's courtesy of an XL fusion engine. It's packing 17 double heat sinks for a total dissipation of 34 points per turn. That's also really good. It's got an endosteel internal structure and also layered with ferrofibrous armor. Got 12 tons for total coverage, 230 points, so it's basically 100% coverage on the mech. It is a little bit light in the rear. We'll take a look at that, but otherwise this mech is just monstrous. As far as the weapons go, no hand actuators. It has a pair of LRM-20s. They're mounted in the shoulders. It has a pair of ER large and a pair of ER mediums in each arm. Has a medium pulse laser in the left torso, and then a couple machine guns rounding out the armament as well. It has 12 reloads on the LRM, so 6 for each in each respective torso. And of course, the the ever-present 200 rounds of machine gun ammo that you will never use and most likely dump for fear of having it detonate. No, but seriously, so that's also in the right torso as well. All right, so joking aside, let's dive into the offensive benchmarks. So, the offensive benchmarks largely have not changed. We've obviously incorporated all the new weapon types, the streaks and the special rules for ultra weapons and all of these different things. There are some assumptions baked in, like ultra weapons. They're always going to try to fire 2 shots when they can. LBX are always going to try to fire a solid slug. That's, we're looking to maximize our damage output here. So basically, there are some assumptions baked in, but ultimately, the way the analytics engine goes about running the simulation is really unchanged. It starts at 21 inches. Clearly aware there are weapons that can shoot beyond that, but this is where the benchmark starts. So this top benchmark here is our red line output benchmark. So this is looking at 2 things. The white area, which is our baseline, this is how much damage can the mech do without building up any more than 4 points of heat. That's our heat cap. We don't want to incur any penalties from heat, period. The red line is basically, let's just fire as much as we can without shutting down. So basically your heat threshold is 29, and how much damage can we do? And what this really shows us is a couple of things. So the Mad Cat, the Timberwolf, I should say, whatever you want to call it, this guy definitely has the capability of building up a tremendous amount of heat. So you'll notice it can get up there to 30 points of heat and sit there for quite a good period of time. It heats up basically in 2 or 3 turns. That means there is some opportunity to push the mech. However, I will also say that this mech is very laden with a lot of energy weapons and heat building. Like the LRM-20s, they build up a ton of heat, right? So when we went down to the optimized benchmark and we tried to squeeze a little bit more damage out of it, we were successful in doing that to some degree, but not a whole lot, right? We got another 12 points of damage over the 12 turns, so basically another point per turn. And you can see that basically at 9 inches and 3 inches, we were able to pull the trigger on a couple more weapons, bring weapons into play a little bit more. But at the end of the day, this mech is just tremendously efficient, even at its baseline. It did 278.9 points of damage. Now, if you're new to this, you're like, so what? For comparison, the Atlas, the King Crab, the Banshee, we just did a huge comparison on those a few weeks ago. The Atlas, I believe, was at 192. The King Crab was, I think, at 187. The Banshee at 193. I don't remember what the Highlander was at. So we're talking about, south of 200 points of damage for some of the biggest and meanest assault mechs of the Succession Wars era. And this guy, 75 ton, just sort of your frontline main clan mech, blowing that number out of the water, doing over 80 points of damage. And if optimized, it's basically doing 100 more points of damage, average calculated damage, right? This is an alpha strike potential. This is like if you just shoot your weapons, right? What are you likely to get based on target numbers and things like that at these prescribed range brackets? 100 more points of damage over 12 time. Think about that. That's a lot of damage. These clan mechs are mean, and that's probably why they cost so much. Let's go over to the lethality index. So what happens here, again, we're still running it up against the Javelin. We have not changed that. I really like to keep that the same. I know a lot of you guys said, you should change it based on the mech. Well, then you don't have a baseline. You don't know what you're comparing against. And we're not necessarily just looking at, well, did you kill it 100% of the time, right? You want to look at the kill curve. You want to look at the time to kill. You want to look at how many critical hits it's inflicting. So let's take a look at the Timberwolf and see where that's stacked up. So damage per hit. This looks at your average damage per hit, right? Every time you land a hit, what are you churning out? This lands at 5.81. That's about average. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with that number. Critical hits is pretty good. It does about 4.11 per turn, and that's just because it has so many weapons to bring to bear. If you look at the damage groupings in the bottom left, you can see how many weapons it is able to fire turn over turn. It's a lot. It's pulling the trigger on 6 to 7 weapons. That's a lot. And then if you factor in the LRMs, are each 4 clusters. So that's 4 chances if they all hit, potentially for critical hits. So that's pretty good. Time to kill, 6.56 turns. So, in BattleTech lore, right, I believe a turn is 10 seconds. So you're talking about this thing is shredding that mech in a minute, which is just brutal. I would not want to go up against this thing in a javelin. And then by percent, right, you can see a couple of changes here to the lethality index. We've added engine kills as a metric. This is important now in the clan invasion era because we're looking at XL engines. Typically I've lumped them together in the Succession Wars era, but now you can really take out a mech by blowing off its side torso if it does have an XL engine. That statistic becomes far more important as a standalone value rather than sort of blended in with a general CT head kill. So we pulled that out, and so you can kind of see how that stacks up, right? It got 3.2% on the engine kills, and then 13.8% of the time it killed the javelin just straight through the head, which is impressive. And again, that's those mean ER large lasers. They pack a nasty punch. And then 82.9% of the time, it's just straight up slagging the thing. The kill curve is real good. We talked about time to kill on this mech, so on the bottom you can kind of see that thing ramps up pretty well, and then it just flatlines, right around the, whatever that is, 7-inch, 6-inch mark. The javelin is pretty much guaranteed to be dead at that point. So overall, on an offensive, just grading this thing offensively, incredible amounts of damage for the first clan mech that we've looked at. Okay, guys, so let's take a look at the defensive benchmark. So there's a couple of small changes here. Let's start on the mobility side. So first of all, the motive hit. So they're calculated the same way. There's no change in the simulation. What we're doing is instead of looking at it in terms of a percent, we're looking at it just as a flat number of actuator hits, right? So how many times did this mech suffer an actuator hit over the 12-turn games, right? And remember, we're running 10,000 simulations, so you're going to see some fractions here. And basically what comes out is, on average, this mech almost never sees an actuator hit. 0.03 actuators are destroyed, per game. So this mech, incredibly resilient. The other thing we did is we're looking now at average target modifier. So this was something I added to the code so that as it took damage, or as it engaged mask or jump jets or whatever, right, as it can get that modifier up or down, whatever it might be, basically this is showing us turn over turn what was the average target modifier for this mech. And in the defensive simulation, as a reminder, it's going up against an awesome AQ. That thing's just blasting down as many PPCs as it can every round. And this mech, your mech, the Timberwolf, it's not shooting back. So we just want to see how long it can survive. It will move as fast as it can, whether it's jumping, whether it's engaging mask, whether it's just flat out running on the ground, right? So whatever it can do, that's what it's going to do. When we get to a mech with mass, we'll talk about that a little bit more. There are some assumptions, as you know. If you engage mass too much, it can overload and freeze the legs and do all this crazy stuff. So it will sporadically use it, so that will never happen. But at the end of the day, it's going to engage these modes of movement to its best advantage. So when we're looking at the average target modifier, all of that's factored in, and you can see the Timberwolf basically sustaining a +3 mod the entire game. It drops to 2.8, drops a little bit below 3. It was at around turn 5 or so, but ultimately, most games, this thing is not going to be taking any actuator hits, and it's going to maintain a very, very steady targeting mod, which again contributes highly to its survivability. So speaking of which, let's move down to the center. So armor. We talked about this in the technical overview. It's almost 100%, I think 99.6 by the number. It has tremendous armor coverage everywhere. It is a little bit light in the rear, but that's only as compared to everything else. I mean, really, it has so many pips back there. You should not have anything to worry about. Even if you find yourself with, something in the rear arc there, I wouldn't worry too much. This mech has just incredibly high amounts of protection. So hard to bring down. And that, again, all of these things, they feed into the survivability. So if you look at the pie chart on the left, 91.3% survivability. It was only killed roughly 9% of the time, right? I think 8.7 is how that works out. And you can see the CT or head kills 4.7%, ammo kills 2.8%, and again, breaking out engine kills, it's a very important metric in this era, 1.2%. So even with the XL engine and the ammo in the side torso, it's just just barely getting killed by the engine. It's just, again, incredibly resilient mech overall. On the ammo side, so if you look at the bottom bar chart, that shows us what is the crit percent chance by location. So this is assuming you roll a hit, you confirm a critical, what's the likelihood that you're going to hit ammo? Very low, so below 25% on both the left and right torsos. No ammo anywhere else. So those torsos are pretty well packed out with things like the engine, the double heat sinks, weapons galore. So very hard to even hit that ammo if you're lucky enough to get through that thick hide. Not much to really talk about on the cumulative survivability. Again, this mech barely dies, 91% survivability. And I will tell you, that's not necessarily the case for all of these clan mechs. Some of them do see quite a few deaths. Again, we talked about BattleTech online. You can go to BattleTech.com and check out some of the other clan mechs that we have up there. This mech in particular, again, it's that high mod, it's that 100% armor coverage. Very tough mech. All right, now we're going to take a look at my favorite thing, efficiency. So this tells us basically bang for buck for this mech. So the Timberwolf, we know it was a killer, a stone cold killer on offense. Had that 278 point baseline average calculated damage output. It was up to 290 on the optimized. Survivability was well into the 90s. I think it was like 91% and change. So very, very tough contender here. That means that it delivers a lot of damage, and it's going to be able to continue to deliver a lot of damage throughout the whole course of the game. That's what you see in that top chart there. So as the survivability drops, that purple area begins to separate a little bit, damage begins to drop just a little bit, but really it's a very marginal amount. On the bottom, we quantify that. So you see the 3 bars on the left, again, representing your baseline, your optimized, and then your effective ACD, which is, again, the cumulative damage that you're able to do over the 12-turn benchmark, factoring in the survivability. We have this new statistic down there called damage loss. Now, we've talked about this a lot. We talked about it in pretty much every mech review, and that really is showing us this is what the mech is capable of bringing to the table, but this is what it's likely to bring to the table. What is that percentage loss? Again, that's 3.3 on the Timberwolf. That's very good. That means it's holding its value throughout the course of the game. And when we look at the next one, the efficiency score, this is basically our overall rating on a scale from 1 to 10. This is basically how much damage per 100 BV this mech can put out. And the Timberwolf clocks in at 7.34. That's rated at, when you're using a Gunnery 2 pilot and a Gunnery 2 sort of 140% modifier, right, to that BV. So all that's factored in there. And that's not bad. That's well above average. Most mechs are in the 5 to 6 range. You will find clan mechs that peg the chart at 10. If you do their actual efficiency, they're in the 12s. They're incredibly good. So the Timberwolf isn't necessarily the top performer, and I attribute that to the incredibly high battle value on this mech. Again, we're at 2,700 points. That is, that's very, very high. You can almost feel like an entire Lance of Light mechs for 2,700 points. So that's very expensive. And then, again, we talked about this earlier, you layer in those more expensive pilots, Gunnery 2, Piloting 3, whatever, that BV is just going to skyrocket. So I think that hurts the efficiency a little bit there. Now, when we look at the gunnery score sensitivity, one interesting thing to note, and again, you can check this out at BattleTech.com. If you look at some of the bigger, badder clan mechs, you will actually see a drop in basically your efficiency score as you get higher up in the, basically, or I should say lower down into the gunnery score. So your efficiency drops as your gunnery gets better. Why is that? Because the cost doesn't substantiate the return on investment. Because these mechs, again, it's a percent modifier on the BV value, it gets so high and so prohibitive that it's interesting to see, like, the amount of damage that you can do per point of BV, it's not there. This is especially true for mechs with targeting computers where you're sort of getting that inbuilt benefit already. On the Timberwolf, it's a little more linear once you hit Gunnery 3, Gunnery 2, Gunnery 1, Gunnery 0. Obviously, Gunnery 2, Gunnery 3 tend to be the best for most mechs. I think this follows suit, although you can kind of see Gunnery 1 has the biggest jump there, and then it almost plateaus at Gunnery 0. So interesting to see. Sensitivity on this mech is at 0.584, so it's in the middle, nothing great. And if you look at the bottom chart there, where is it dealing the most damage? when you increase your gunnery, your biggest return on investment is going to be at longer ranges. This makes sense. It's where your modifiers are the biggest. So you're going to see statistically the best bang for buck there. Now, looking at the sort of the loadout of the Timberwolf, those LRM-20s are big, they're mean. So playing it with a better pilot, definitely keep it a little further back, a little bit longer. It's got those ER large, and you can work those pretty easily with the 34 point heat dissipation as well. But speaking of where to play this mech, let's take a look at the threat analysis next, and then we can get into roles. So the threat analysis in Battlelytics 3.0 does look a little bit different than it did in the prior iteration. From a computational perspective, it's all the same data, it's the same analysis. We basically took a different take on how to kind of quantify the threat. We were doing a ratio before. I opted really just to kind of put the numbers out there so you guys could kind of interpolate and make your own assumptions based on what you see. In addition, the role analysis is a little bit expanded. I wanted to add some insight into what I think constitutes a specific role, with the big green arrow, being like, hey, this is very important. The smaller green arrow meaning like this is, pretty essential to this role, and then the dash meaning it's, it's not really relevant. So for example, a brawler, you really need strong close range firepower, and you need pretty decent defense, right, to succeed in that role, and so on and so forth. So those are just sort of indicators. They won't change. What will change is obviously which role is selected for a given mech. All right, so let's start out with the sort of the key metrics there. We've got our optimized ACD. Again, this mech put down 290.8 points. That's almost 100 more than the Atlas AS7D from the Succession Wars era. Incredible amounts of damage. Time to kill, so the lethality, this was at 6.56 turns. That's, again, in sort of fluff terms, that's about a minute for this Timberwolf to shred through that target. The redline heat, so this built up 260 points of heat over the 12-turn redline benchmark. That's a lot of heat. This thing can get hot very quick. It's got a ton of weapons. Even with 34 double heat sinks, you can oversaturate those very quickly. Movement real good, 5'8". The average target mod, again, across the 12 turns and the 10,000 sims, it was 2.9, so just under 3, which is terrific. And the survival rate, 91.2%, so very, very tough. When we looked at the damage loss, 3.3%, so very low. That means you don't need to protect this mech. You can play aggressively with this mech. Again, tough as nails. Sensitivity, we talked about that just a moment ago, pretty much average there. And then the efficiency clocking it at 7.34, so above average, definitely good return on investment. However, again, that 2700 BV, wow, I mean, it's it's so hard to try to get that into a force. It's so expensive. Again, and then when you jack it up with better pilots, better gunners, it gets real expensive real quick for a 75-ton mech. But overall, very good. When we look at the threat assessment, so we're looking at basically now 4 things on this chart. So we're still looking at our alpha strike. That's in the dark red bars in the back. We're still looking at our maximum ACD. So this is the amount of ACD. This is the average calculated damage this mech can put out, right, if it fires everything. It's irrespective of heat. The yellow triangles represent how much heat is built up. This is not a cumulative number. Again, this is not a turn-over-turn benchmark. This is at each of these range brackets, what's it capable of doing. So, for example, at 12 inches, if it fires everything, it could build up 17 points of heat, I believe. Okay, so that's heat. That's pretty intuitive. The white area is what we call zero heat ACD. So this is similar to baseline, except for what I want to know is, what if I build up no heat at all? I don't want to build up a single point of heat. How much damage can I put out, right? And what I want to compare is what's, again, we're looking at the threat, really, we're looking at heat as a currency, right? A currency to deal damage. So I want to look at, how much can I do if I build up no heat? How much more do I get from an ACD perspective, right? So you kind of go up to the light red bars, right? How much more can I get out of this if I alpha strike? And then what's my total maximum damage potential? And that kind of gives you an indicator, right? So if there's a great degree of separation between the white and the red. That tells you there's a huge opportunity to deal more damage. But then you have to look at the yellow and say, well, how much heat, and is it really worth it to me? So when I look at, for example, this Timberwolf, I really would not want to push this mech too hard because, again, you build up 12 points of heat on an Alpha Strike, but you're only picking up maybe like another 12 points of damage average, again, for that amount of heat. Is that worth it? I'm not really sure. So instead of showing that as a ratio line, now we just give you the raw data in this format. Interested to see what you guys think about that. But this, again, it gives you a little bit more room to kind of make your own assumptions and interpret the data on your own. So this mech, let's talk about how the Timberwolf stacks up. Overall, I mean, it's a tremendous performer. Again, the Alpha Strike, even out to at 21 inches, is so high. It has just great damage potential. And even as you get closer, right, I mean, that just continues to climb. But really, you've got those 2 LRM-20 racks and 2 ER large lasers, just so right out of the gate, this thing can really hammer a mech to shreds from the furthest ranges, in the game. Heat-wise, like we talked about, this does get very hot. And is it worth it, right? Baseline, this mech also does a lot of damage, and it has so many different weapons. Depending on what your heat level's at, if you need to bleed off 1 or bleed off 2 or pick up a couple, you can really mix and match the weapons. Again, that's a great benefit to having so many different weapons on the chassis, and it does have great range overall. You can see, again, once it's in 15 inches, it's pretty much crushing it. So. Great chassis overall from a threat assessment perspective. I think this mech has a lot of capability, and if it needs a knockout punch, very easily can do so. But even, again, if we look at the baseline ACD, the optimized ACD, just chilling, keeping it cool, not going nuts on the Alpha Strikes, it can still just outperform most mechs on the table. When we look at the threat envelope on the far right there, this just shows us where the mech's arcs of fire are. It has a large laser and an ER medium, right, ER large as well, on each arm. That's really good. And it's got the torso-mounted LRM-20, so the forward firing arc is lethal. And then, again, you can twist, you can move one of those arms to cover a rear arc. You can do a lot of different things with this mech because, again, it's got those big beam weapons on those arms, so that makes it very effective in covering really all of the angles there. So let's talk about rolls. Let's wrap it up there. So rolls up here, I picked 3. It's typically what I do. The first one that I picked, I automatically gravitated to was a frontline mech. I think this is the kind of mech that has excellent firepower across the board. It does have excellent defense. As an added bonus, it's very mobile. So this mech, if you needed to move with a faster lance, and a lot of the clan mechs are typically faster than the IS ones anyway, but this mech can just keep up with just about anything. So pretty good in that regard. The second thing that I gravitated towards almost instantly was a cavalry mech. Again, because of its speed, because of its strong firepower across the board, it can get across the table very quickly, basically get right into the mix there. And do a great job in close as well. It has all those mediums, has the machine guns if you need them. And if you're playing rapid fire rules with those things, which that's not factored into this analysis, but if you are playing those rules, machine guns can actually get pretty nasty. So overall, again, great in that cavalry role. Lastly, I picked a skirmisher role for this mech. Here's why. You can keep this mech on a flank operating for quite some time. Now, it does only have 6 reloads on the LRM-20s. However, if you're sitting out on the flank, you're firing in for 6 turns with twin LRM-20s and an ER large, possibly 2 if you want to take on a couple of points of heat. That's nasty. And again, you're moving at a +3 modifier. You're going to be very difficult to hit. People are going to have to pay attention to you. And if they don't, you can just run your LRM banks dry and then close in if you need to do so. But this mech is a huge distraction, and it's so tough it can very easily operate on its own on the flank. Really excited for when we start bringing clan mechs into play in our battle reports. I think this one is certainly one that I'm going to want to try out first. Again, if I can even fit it in the list, we'll have to do some clan on clan action to make sure that the 20,000 battle value or whatever we're going to need actually is fair and equal. But yeah, I mean, it's an expensive mech, but man, it is so good. It is terrifying and sobering to see how much better these clan mechs are. From just a mathematical perspective, right? Just we ran the same benchmarks. We looked at so many Intersphere mechs in the Succession Wars era, and then we run this thing, and it's just blows the doors off anything we've seen, even the biggest and baddest IS mechs. So surprising the clans didn't win the invasion. Sucks for them. But anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you like this. Hope you like diving into some clan invasion era stuff. As always, would love to hear your comments and your feedback. I do have a running list of all the requests that you guys have put out there. Some of the ones that you've made for specific chassis. Maybe we'll take a look at some of the newer refit ones from the 3040s and early 3050s. So we could certainly do that as well. And don't forget, check out BattleTech.com. I think a lot of mechs are up there that you might be interested in seeing as well. So guys, thank you so much. If you haven't already, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, give us a like. Have a great night, and we'll see you real soon. Always more coming from Death from Above Wargaming.